Your assistance is important. We need your assistance to continue producing interesting material because 90% of our readers have not yet subscribed. Please click the notification bell and subscribe. Please share your city in the comments section below to let us know where you're watching from. Sometimes we simply know something is wrong, you know. Not from anything overt, no loud hints, no visible fissures, just a gut instinct. On the eve of his 20th wedding anniversary, Leonel felt precisely that. On the surface, everything appeared to be ideal. Nestled among tall maples and well-kept hedges in a posh neighborhood, their house was a vision of refined success. As the sun descended, golden shadows danced across the polished wood and stone pathways in front of the house. It was even more spotless inside. The open living area was illuminated by warm lighting that cast a golden glow. The floors were hardwood and shone like mirrors. Despite being unlit, the fireplace was a proud focal point, surrounded by pieces of art that Elliot had chosen over the years. Elegant, pricey, and abstract. Leonel had worked tirelessly. The dining table looked like it belonged in an intoxicated end catalog. Antique silverware, crystal glasses, and white linen. A teardrop-shaped vase held a centerpiece of deep red roses. The smells of Cabernet Sauvignon and grilled steak blended with the soft flicker of vanilla-scented candles. He tried to smile as he stood back and absorbed everything. He had meticulously planned it. He had even located the old box of home recordings, those wobbly, grainy VHS tapes that held memories that had been stored for a long time. Intimate, sentimental, and saying, "I remember everything," was what he wanted to surprise Elliot with. Nevertheless, a weird fear surged in his chest beneath the surface, as if his subconscious knew something his head wasn't prepared to acknowledge. His hands trembled a little as he opened the box and entered the den. The tape with the label Wedding 2003 was lying on top of it. Sliding the cassette into the old player he had spent 2 days repairing, he gave a half-hearted smile. With a gentle hum, the screen came to life. Before the past came in all its sepia-tinted splendor, the familiar fuzz of ancient video danced for a moment. Young and gorgeous, shimmering in white lace, he saw Elliot, his Elliot, laughing while someone adjusted her veil, then turning to face the camera and grinning as if she could see straight through it and into his soul. Yudo came their vows. The audience applauded. There was confetti flying. As the camcorder moved from visitor to guest, the blurry video shook. Leaning back, Leonel allowed everything to pass over him. He took a sip of his wine. For an instant, the sensation in his stomach subsided. Perhaps it was nerves. After all, 20 years is a long time. Miles, then. The camera panned throughout the reception area as it tilted. Elliot was back in the background, almost out of sight. Not with Leonel, but this time. She was standing next to a column. Although the lighting was low, it was still visible through the lens. A tall, slender waiter wearing a black vest and white shirt, perhaps 19 or 20 years old. And Elliot smiling with her hands on his chest. Yudo, bending closer and closer. Yudo, it occurred. She gave him a kiss. Not a mistake, not a pleasant peck on the cheek. A long, purposeful, passionate kiss. Leonel sat up so quickly that the wineglass he was holding fell to the ground and broke. In his ears, his pulse screamed. His jaw was slack as he gazed at the television, praying and hoping that it was all in his head. That he had been duped by the shadows. He wound again. Rewatched it. And once more. It became evident each time. Her grin. Her palms. That kiss. Suddenly, the space felt like a furnace. He ripped his jacket off. Take shallow breaths. Swirling thoughts. What was that? A liaison? An error? A moment when intoxicated? Leonel got to his feet and ripped the box open once more. Tapes fell on the ground. Maui for a honeymoon. Christmas of 2007. 2011 ski vacation. Recital of the daughter's dance. He pushed them into the player one after the other. Time travel. Scanning. hoping for a pattern of some sort. Or perhaps wishing it had only happened once. The remaining tapes, however, were typical. Typical family times. Laughter. Birthdays. Journeys. Not a shred of suspicion. Not even a peek to the side. Nevertheless, the harm was done. Leonel sat in the flickering screen's glow. His heart shattered beneath his feet like a piece of glass. He recalled the present. He made his way to the kitchen, where the wine was sitting next to a tiny velvet box. Within it? A fob for keys. Not just any key. This one belonged to a silver and sleek Mercedes-Benz SL convertible that was specially ordered months ago. The type of item you purchase for a person you have faith in. Someone you care about. It felt like a terrible joke now. The front door snapped open before he could even make up his mind what to do next. Beautifully adorned in a black silk dress, Elliot came in. She dropped her purse onto the console, her heels making a faint echoing sound against the marble floor. She stopped to observe the spectacle. By candlelight. The tasteful table. The aroma of roses and wine. Wow, she remarked in a quiet, fake surprisal tone. This year, you truly went all out. Leonel mustered a smile. It's just our 20th, he remarked. Elliot approached, looking around the table. She turned to him and smirked teasingly as she ran a manicured finger up the stem of the wineglass. Slowly, she said, 20 years. Doesn't it feel like forever? Her look was keen, but her tone was light. Testing. Leonel's thoughts whirled. Was she this cunning all the time? All these years, was he simply blind? She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter. Really, what's the occasion? He shrugged, you're not usually this extravagant. Can't I show my wife some love? Her head was cocked. Naturally. It's simply unusual. She added, mockingly light-hearted, after a beat. Is there not going to be a surprise announcement of some sort? Leonel tried to maintain a neutral expression by biting his tongue. As he had already set an alarm for himself, his phone buzzed. He gave it a quick look and got up. He lied about the hospital. Case of emergency. I must leave. Elliot scowled. This evening? Leonel gave a nod. Unable to help? With a theatrical sigh, she reached for her purse. Well, open your gift before you dash out to rescue lives. His hands were strangely steady as he took the tiny box from her. There was a watch inside. It had a sleek, elegant appearance with gold accent at first impression. It seemed odd, though, as he took it up. It's too light. Inexpensive. He turned it over. The branding was not correct. It was thin metal. It was a copy. A phony. She had purchased a $20 knockoff for him. In honor of their 20th anniversary. He mustered a smile and shut the box. Regards. It's considerate. Missing the tone entirely, she smiled. Leonel reached for his coat. As he got to the door, she called, don't stay too late. Additionally, don't assume I overlooked my present. He didn't look back. Oh, he murmured softly, don't worry. Nothing has slipped my mind. The gentle flicker of the candles behind him gradually faded as he went out into the night. That night, something changed. Leonel was no longer merely a husband. He developed into a man who sought the truth. And the weight of suspicion weighed on every breath he took. Leonel sat by himself in his car, the wipers swaying in time with the rain pattering softly on the windshield. He hadn't watched the wedding video for days. Days that seemed like years. His environment, which had formerly been tidy, had become hazy due to incessant inquiries. He had created his life with Elliot, but now she felt like a stranger. A well-dressed stranger with impeccable composure who might be hiding secrets even she couldn't remember how to conceal. He stared at the cafe across the street while tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. Elliot had informed him that she would be having a casual Wednesday catch-up with Dana over lunch. Miles, the falsehood became a blazing warning sign when Leonel's subtle text message was answered by Dana with, "Nope, haven't seen her this week." 5 minutes later, Elliot left the cafe, strolling idly with her latte in hand. She looked down at the cup and grinned to herself. Leonel squinted his eyes. When giving it to her, the barista, a tall man in his 30s, had leaned far over the counter. And that grin? Not because of the coffee. He had stopped visualizing it. Leonel sat in the study later that night, surrounded by the quiet hum of the ceiling fan and shadows. The VHS tape box remained, but it now served more as a reminder of the past than as a nostalgic aid. After a lengthy period of staring at them, he turned to his laptop. The man who spied on his wife was not someone he wanted to be. Miles, he was already him. It seemed like a betrayal to create the internet profile, but it was also a lifeline, a last chance, or perhaps the last straw. Naturally, he did not use his own name. Using AI algorithms, he altered a dashing stock photo of a man in his 40s to make it appear real but untraceable. It's Daniel Holt. 42 years old. Divorced and prosperous. A man who has everything and only wished to meet a real person. He wrote a note to Elliot. She answered in a matter of hours. Her tone was courteous, guarded, and perhaps even wary at first. Miles, the tone changed on day 2. She asked thoughtful questions, laughed more, and even related a few personal stories. She revealed her status as a widow to Daniel on the 3rd day. Leonel gazed incredulously at the screen. Not married, not divorced, widowed. A widow. Was that a disturbed dream? Or had she merely changed her truth to suit her wishes after becoming emotionally estranged from their marriage years ago? She started to flirt more in her communications. At first faint, like shadows moving behind you, then more distinct. There are moments when I consider leaving and beginning over. A fresh life, a new city, and someone who truly notices me. Leonel felt as though someone had punched him in the chest. He took a while to answer. He required some time to process the pain of her words and the truth of their current situation. Leonel wasn't the only one who discovered a hidden line, though, because the past has a way of reverberating into the present. Leonel's longtime co-worker and friend Brandon saw the change in him at work. One afternoon, while drinking lukewarm coffee in the break room, he remarked, "You look like you haven't slept in a week. Is everything all right?" Leonel thought about telling a lie. But now what was the point? "I believe that Elliot has been concealing something." Brandon looked up. "Such as?" "All of it?" Brandon was silent for a while. He simply looked at Leonel for a long time, with pity but also hesitancy, as though he knew something and was unsure whether to tell Leonel. Leonel couldn't get rid of the feeling that night. He went back to the tapes in search of explanations rather than proof. He had to see the Elliot he had known in the past. The small gestures, the giggles, the glances they exchanged when they thought no one else was looking. Miles, an odd event occurred. Leonel saw something strange in one of the home recordings from a Lake Tahoe family vacation. It was the summer of 2011. By the water, their daughters were having fun. Sitting on an adjacent bench was Elliot. She was approached from the side by a man. Leonel didn't recognize the person. He wore sunglasses and was tall and well-groomed. As he approached, Elliot stood up. Rather of turning away or making a courteous gesture, she gave him a hug. Something else, not a friendly embrace. As she talked, her body was inclined toward his, her hand resting on his chest. Leonel put the tape on hold. Just enough of the man's face was turned toward the camera to reveal his distinctive jawline. It was Dana's husband, Todd. That was the same Todd who had been at dinner that evening, laughing, sipping wine, and staring directly at Leonel. Now the betrayal was more painful. Elliot wasn't merely being emotionally aloof. There was a pattern. A well-trained, silent double existence. Some individuals flee from the truth when it becomes more unpleasant than lies. Others enter the fire directly. That night, Leonel didn't sleep. Like a siren in an empty tunnel, Elliot's message, "Sometimes I think about running away with someone who really sees me," reverberated in his head. It was more than a fleeting idea. It was a wish. And she had told a stranger, or at least what she thought was a stranger, about it. Leonel continued the stunt for days. On the internet, he was Daniel, affable, considerate, and everything Elliot seemed to want. He listened as she vented her emotions about Leonel's lack of intimacy and how she occasionally felt as though she was mourning him while he was still alive. He was crushed by it. Not because it was all true, but more because he was unaware of how unnoticeable he had become to his spouse. Nevertheless, hearing it from her brought a peculiar sense of relief. Leonel eventually requested her to meet through Daniel, despite his deceit. "Only coffee?" he typed. "No pressure, somewhere quiet." She paused. He watched as the typing dots came and went. Finally, a tiny bookstore cafe may be found on Carson Street. "I'll be in the rear at noon on Tuesday." Tuesday arrived. Leonel was early. The cafe had a cinnamon and paper scent. He sat down close enough to view her well but distant enough to watch. Elliot arrived 10 minutes late and didn't resemble the composed bride from their wedding video. She didn't wear any makeup. She had fatigued eyes. She appeared authentic. She sat down by the rear wall. Her thumb nervously tapped the screen of her phone, which remained in her grasp. He didn't come over. He was unable to. Rather, he drove to the coast, where the waves beat the beach in a rhythmic rage, and fled without anyone noticing. He no longer only required answers from Elliot. He was the one. He retreated during the following few days. Daniel has stopped sending messages. Stop observing. Nothing but quiet. He had to know. Would she realize that he was no longer pursuing? Would she give a darn? She did. In real life, too, Elliot became aloof. As if something had begun to break inside of her. She grew more reflective and quiet. One night as he was reading, she came up to him. "Leonel. Can we have a conversation?" Even though his heart was racing, he spoke steadily. Naturally. Her hands trembled a little when she sat down. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper as she continued, "I don't know what's happening to me. I feel as though I'm about to drown. I can't stop dreaming of a different life. I also despise myself for it. Even though you've always been kind to me, I no longer feel like myself. Not who I was before we were married. Furthermore, I'm not sure if you can see me right now." Leonel listened silently as his chest constricted. At last he spoke. "Perhaps I haven't. Perhaps I was too preoccupied with keeping things together to notice how much we were both unraveling." Elliot's eyes filled with tears. "Do you despise me?" Slowly, he shook his head. "The number. Miles, I believe we have lost the ability to be truthful with one another. We seem to have forgotten how to look at one another." There was a long pause. She made a statement that caught him off guard. "I've been conversing with someone on the internet. I believe I was using him as an escape route, even if it was first innocuous. I have no idea who he was in real life." Leonel inhaled deeply. "I understand," he answered softly. "I was him." Elliot stopped. "What?" He said, "I made the account. No, I had to. I had to realize what we had lost. I apologize as well." Stunned, Elliot gazed at him. Tears began to trickle down her cheeks. There was silence again in the room. Not irate or rude. They were simply overwhelmed by all the words they had never spoken out loud. They didn't fight that night. They didn't shout. Holding the truth like something fresh and delicate, they simply sat together in the silence. Days went by. Their conversation increased. They were more concerned with what they desired from the present than with the past. Together, they decided to look for assistance. It was possible to rebuild it, brick by brick, not because everything was damaged. They returned the VHS tapes to their box. Leonel was no longer troubled by the wedding video, but it was not forgotten. There was a moment. Yes, it's beautiful, but it's just one part of a bigger story that's still being told. The narrator whispers that certain truths hurt. Miles, silence poses a greater threat than our fears. Speaking up is sometimes the most courageous thing we can do. Not every story has a conclusion. Acceptance is the end of some. After 6 months. The silence made the house feel different, not because of the new paint job on the hallway walls or the new furniture. Not the stillness that accompanies sorrow or bitterness. There was calm here. Elliot and Leonel had chosen the difficult route. Therapy. The truth. Sincerity with unpolished edges. They used to giggle together on some nights. On other evenings, they sat opposite one another and remained silent. Even that was a step forward. Leonel ended up back in the attic one rainy evening. Wandering, without specifically searching for anything. Like an old wound, the VHS box sat in the corner. After some hesitation, he opened it. Inside, still in its battered black sleeve, the wedding video rested on top of the others. Something slid out from under it when he raised it. It was a tape he had never seen. No label. A simple, somewhat dusty case. Leonel blinked. He was certain Elliot hadn't made any more cassettes, and he hadn't. Caution gave way to curiosity. He brought it downstairs, put it in the ancient VCR that had somehow managed to survive 10 years of disuse, and hit play. First static, then flickering. Perhaps a year into their marriage, a younger Elliot appeared on the television. In their first apartment, she sat. She drew her hair back. No cosmetics. Wearing one of his old hoodies. She gave the camera her whole attention. Leonel? She said. Most likely, you won't ever see this. I have no idea why I am filming it. Perhaps because I need to remember what it was like to be seen, and I feel like I'm vanishing. She hesitated. I cherish you. Miles, I'm afraid. I'm afraid we'll drift and not even be aware of it. That in the same bed, we will awaken strangers. She smiled a little, dejectedly. I hope we work things out if you ever find this. We didn't give up, I hope. The screen turned black. No closing credits. No last remarks. That's all. Leonel sat silently in shock. Like a message in a bottle from another life, the tape had waited for years, tucked away. He presented it to Elliot that evening. She didn't say anything as she watched it. She turned to him when it was over. She said, I don't remember making that. He gave a small smile. Perhaps you weren't meant to. Perhaps it was intended for this iteration of us. They did not weep. They avoided going back in time. They simply held one another. In recognition, not desperation. When it could have been simpler to leave, two people had opted to stay. Time passed. They didn't get flawless. Miles, they appeared. There were days when everyone laughed and danced awkwardly in the kitchen. Others were silent, thinking deeply. Miles, each day belonged to them. Not performed, but shared. Leonel never used a fictitious name to message anyone again. He didn't have to. Furthermore, Elliot never mentioned Daniel again. Because secrets were no longer necessary for them. In the end, they honored their wedding video by digitizing it rather than holding on to the past. They smiled softly as they watched it one evening. Younger, wide-eyed, and full of promises they weren't yet sure how to fulfill, there they were. And now they were once more. Real, but not flawless. Not all stories have a happy ending. Gently, the narrator says. They conclude with a silent resolve to continue. Together.